the other way around. So every video I do has 3 or 4 minutes of total nonsense.
Okay.
So, but my people are trained. You know, and this is just what, I guess this is just what happens when you have such advanced technology. There we are. It works. Good. Okay, excellent.
So glad we were able to get this working.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay. Oh, lovely. What a lovely shot. Live stream Q&A with Suzannah Rowntree, spelled correctly. I kept thinking Rowntree. Of course, that has nothing to do with it, right?
Many people do. It's
Yeah.
based on Rowntree. So
Yeah, I figured. Yeah. Silly me. Okay, here's the direct link. There. See you there. Okay. So I'm going to go live right now. And I'm going to tell people on Facebook, and then people are going to start coming on. It's going to take 1 or 2 more minutes. So if you wanted to go get your tea right now, you could, if you really, really want one.
oh, that's all right. I'm sure I'll be fine.
Okay. We are live. Okay, good. Let's try that again. Okay, that didn't work. Honestly, I think just technology is falling apart all around the world. They're making a pretense of it working, but it doesn't work. Nothing works. Everything's falling apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. How are you guys over there with all of this nonsense? This coronavirus stuff.
The lines at the supermarkets are pretty bad.
Are they?
Yeah, but we're great. We've got beans and rice, so we'll probably just get by on those.
Do you have toilet paper? That's the important question that we Americans have to ask.
We ran out of toilet paper before you people did.
Okay. Fair enough. I guess you got it before we did, didn't you? Yeah.
People certainly started getting worried about it, but it's not like they've done a lot to, you know, I guess, you know, the schools are still open, which
they are. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Our prime minister is like, it's fine. The kids don't get symptoms.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they can also pass it on, and like there are people with all sorts of, yeah. Anyway, but it's good. I'm staying at home, and the people I'm most worried about are staying at home. The older mentors and yeah. So.
I'm curious. I really, for myself, I recognize that this is a big thing, but it really seems to me like people are overreacting. Not that it isn't a terrible thing, but that I just remember H1N1 and I remember SARS and I remember all the others, and I don't remember there being any kind of reaction like this.
I don't actually remember those because we had really terrible internet until a few years ago.
There's your answer. There's your answer. It's everything to do with the internet. Okay. Yeah, this isn't working. Hold on. It doesn't seem to be streaming. Let me make sure that everything's working. You're coming in nice and clear. Okay, 5 watching now. Claims to be working. Oh, Elise is there. Hello, Elise. Then what is the problem? All right. This is really strange. So if I go to YouTube directly, I can see us and I can see the comments, but I can't see any feedback on the Be Live page. Good grief. All right. This is ridiculous. All right, I'm gonna reload my page. Don't go anywhere. All right. Okay, let's try that again. This is fun. This isn't even the worst. There was one time when I had to. Oh wow. Okay. Hello Daniel. Hello Joachim. Hello Elise. Hello Nicholas. Hello everybody. All right, I'm just gonna go directly to the YouTube. This is ridiculous. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's what I'm gonna do. Except I can't, because if I do that, then we'll get in the way. Ooh, Elise just got your Phoenix crate box yesterday with your book. How about that?
Oh, that's great. It's been really fun working with Cecilia on putting that box together. I suggested this to her, so
she's great. I like that whole idea of hers very much. I think it's wonderful. All right, fine. We're just gonna go. I'm gonna pretend this is working. It's not, but I'm gonna pretend that it's working. So, hello everybody. So far, I think it's just my people on the stream so far. So, hi, my people. It's good to see you all. If I don't answer your comments immediately, it's because I can't actually see them off on my page. I have to constantly scroll back and forth from the direct link on YouTube. So, please pepper us with comments, and I will pass them on to Susanna here as I read them, because I don't think she can see them either, which is annoying, but there you go. This is life. Okay, so hi everybody. I am very happy, and there's my child, who is not as happy as I am, to welcome Suzannah Rowntree from Australia, from Melbourne, to my interview series, which has been sort of defunct for the last few months. Apologies. I'm very happy to have you here, Susanna, because I love your books. I've read 2 of them already, and but I'm not going to talk about that. I want you to talk about them. So tell us something about yourself, something unexpected, and make sure you include something about your books in there as well.
Okay, I'm just making sure I share the event with my author page one more time. Okay.
Oh, good.
Something
Yes.
unexpected about myself. Well, I started out. I have a law degree. And the reason why I have a law degree is because I wasn't sure that I was going to make it as an author. Back when I was a teenager, I knew that writing stories and telling stories was what I wanted to do with my life. And but my parents were like, "Oh, we don't want you to be starving in an attic."
Yes. There you go.
So I was thinking about it, and I realized, oh, so many of my favorite authors started out as failed lawyers, and maybe there's a life lesson in that for me. So I went and I did a law degree, and now I write books.
So how did you get from one to the other?
Oh, it's a longish story. I got sort of to the end of my law degree, and I had a great job down at a local firm with the litigation people, which I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. But then around the time of the global financial crisis, that job went the way of all flesh. So, okay. So I would have had to move to Melbourne which is the capital of my state. It's a couple of hours drive away. It's very expensive to live there. And so I was really thinking to myself, do I really want this career so much that I'd be willing to, uproot my life and move and be away from my family? They were going through some stuff. I wanted to be there for them. And so, with one thing and another, I thought, I'd rather just stay where I am and try and find ways of being productive and useful where I am. And so for a while, I did a lot of traveling. I would go and help out friends who needed someone to live in, and just do some sewing. That was one trip I took. Another trip was, most of my trips were to friends who had illness, and so I would just go and run their house, and they would pay for my travel, and I got to stay in New Zealand for several months, and I spent 3 months in Tennessee, and it was just really great. But the whole time I was gradually working more and more into my writing, and more sure that this was what I wanted to do with my life. And so that just sort of, it was a natural progression. Now I'm working full time as a writer, and that's
wow,
what
good
I
for
do.
you. So how did you come to choose independent publishing? Do you have a story with agents and publishers, or did you know that you were going to do indie from the beginning?
Good question. Back when I was in my teens and first beginning to realize that, I love this quote. I have to share it with you. A friend sent it to me. It says, "Many suffer from the incurable disease of writing, and it becomes chronic in their sick minds." By Roman satirist.
Very true.
So, once I realized that this was true of me, I was originally thinking of traditional publishing, because I'm not much of an entrepreneur. I'm still kind of flailing when it comes to marketing my books. But
well, if you're working full time, you're not flailing all that badly.
Well, I didn't say I was making full-time income.
Oh, fair enough.
But yeah, just a bunch of things piled up. I remember one of the straws that broke the camel's back with regards to me switching from traditional publishing to indie publishing. And my dad is a very forward-thinking sort of person, and he was always saying, look, self-publishing is the way of the future. You don't need a publisher to do that now. You can be in charge of your own books. And I'm going, I really don't know if I want to do all the work. And so what really changed my mind was an author that I had been following a little bit online wrote the story about how she got published, and it was like this 10-year-long saga where she was going around to writing conferences. She was married to a successful science fiction author, and so she had this whole saga of finding an agent, losing the agent, finding another agent. The agent finally managed to sell the book. Then she had to rewrite it into 3 books, and I realized, wow, she spent so much of her life, and she's had to, she's in America, and she's got connections, and she goes around to all the writers' conferences. And here I am, I'm stuck in an attic in Outer Barossa. So I thought, I really don't want my professional life to look like that. I know that I got to the point where I realized I was reading traditionally published books that, in my opinion, I could write better than. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'll just go for it, and I'll publish my own books and be the steward of my own work.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the fact about the quality of traditionally published books, because that's often the biggest knock on some independently published books. Whether that's fair or not is up to debate. But what do you do to make sure that your product is as high quality as it can be?
Well, I got a really good start in life on that because I was homeschooled in a somewhat classical manner. So I was constantly reading books that had stood the test of time. And I've continued to be a voracious reader, and I continue to have fairly high standards. And I have to say, a lot of recent books, I can really see how the craft of writing has developed over the last 50, 60, 100 years. Books are much tighter. I mean, if you've read Walter Scott, he's marvelous, but like so messy. Anyway,
but he's wonderful. We love Walter Scott.
When he's wonderful, he's wonderful. And so I have that good foundation. The second thing I have is a really good stable of beta readers, and my closest friend and best beta reader is her name is Christina. She's a very close friend of mine, second generation friend, in fact, and
nice.
She's she gets everything of mine as soon as I've completed. As soon as it's ready to go to beta readers, and she slaughters it, and exactly what she thinks. And I've got a bunch of other people who I go to, and so I've always worked with them, and that's always been very helpful. They don't let me get away with anything. She has excellent taste as well, so that's helpful. And then with my Outremer series, I've just recently started working with a professional editor, and she does development and line editing for me, and that's also been
both. Wow. It seems to me that series is one in which you're trying to do. It seems to be your most epic one to date, maybe the one where you're trying to do the most. And it's definitely paying off. For those of you who don't know, this is a series. If I'm getting it right, stop me if I'm getting it wrong. But it's basically Byzantine Empire of a certain time period, right?
Not quite. The Byzantine Empire is involved, and it did feature most heavily in book 1. But what it's actually about is the 200-year history of the medieval Crusader states.
Ah, okay.
So it's a very ambitious work, and so it sort of spans the 200 years.
But there's magic too, so it's not just.
It's historical fantasy.
Yeah. No, that's the one that I'm enjoying the most. I haven't finished the book 1 yet, but it's one that I'm definitely enjoying the most. And your other one that I really enjoyed was the Pendragon series. What gave you the idea? You can explain to those people who haven't read it what's the main idea and what gave you the idea to write it.
Oh, that is a great story. I was 17, and a lady at church who was also a writer was loaning me some books that she loved that I hadn't read, and she would just bring a book to church and hand it over and see what happened. And one week, the book was a classic novel by Josephine Tay named The Daughter of Time. It's about Richard III. And it completely blew my teenage brain because I had only ever heard the Shakespeare take on Richard III, and so this was it was a detective novel about a detective, and he's stuck in a hospital after one of his previous cases goes bad, and so he's stuck, and he decides to investigate the life of Richard III and see whether he was guilty or not. And so she uses this novel as a way to discuss the historical evidence surrounding Richard III and whether or not he was who Shakespeare portrayed him as. Anyway, so I read it in a couple of hours on that Sunday afternoon, and I really wanted to. I came away just afire with this idea of doing justice to some character who had never been given their due. And the character I picked in the 5 minutes after I had finished reading the book was Guinevere of the Arthurian legends.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
And so it turned in. I spent the next six days writing the first draft of Pendragon's Heir, and then worked on it for about 10 years after that.
Oh, wonderful. 10 years, good. My first one, it took me only 7, so you win. Good job. So down to your process. Does writing energize or exhaust you?
Oh, I would say it's very tiring. I can get to the end of a long day and feel completely knackered. Editing is worse than drafting.
Yeah.
It's tiring, and I can burn myself out if I don't stay at a pretty steady rate of 2,000 to 3,000 words a day.
Really? 2,000 to 3,000, and you're pretty prolific. So you do work, how many days a week do you work to?
It used to be 6, now it's 5 because I needed a little bit of extra rest time, but I found I'm just as productive with the extra day off. So
that's wonderful. And how clean are your first drafts? Just out of curiosity, do you have to do a lot of editing?
They've been dreadful so far.
Oh,
I was really excited this month because I started edits on Watches of Outremer 3, and I realized this is only going to take me about 4 weeks instead of 4 months like last time.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So yeah, I'm gradually getting to the point where I'm putting more planning into the outlining process. And that really helps later on. So
what was an early experience when you learned that stories have power, and how did that affect you as a writer?
Oh, I'm blanking on this one.
That's okay. Take your time.
I think it was a really slow process over time. I remember falling in love with stories when I was about 4, and my mum was reading the Chronicles of Narnia out loud to us, and just seeing everything playing out in my head, and that was why I learned to read, so that I could read the Chronicles of Narnia without.
Really, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So, but yeah, my mum would always. She was homeschooling us, so every time we would scarf through books, churn through the books, and she'd be like, "Are you thinking about what you're reading?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about what I'm reading." And I go away and I think about what I'm reading. I was a good girl. I did what I was told. So
yeah, good for you. So C.S. Lewis, it is excellent. He's the reason that you're a writer. Good. Okay. What's the first book that made you cry, or are you a crier during books?
Very rarely.
Yeah, me too.
I probably can't think of which one the first one was, but
okay, a memorable one then.
Always The Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
The ending of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And then there was Paul Gallico's book, Jenny. It was traumatizing. I howled throughout the last third. Don't read it. It wasn't worth it.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. All right. What do you want your readers to do just as soon as they finish any one of your books?
Buy the next one.
Okay, stock canned answer. She's got it down, everybody. Good job. Excellent.
Do you want a serious answer?
Well, can we get a little deeper than that? But of course, every author wants that. But is there something else?
Yeah, I think particularly for the series that I'm working on at the moment, the Outremer books, I really hope that people will come away wanting to learn more about the history and also wanting to love their neighbor better. Whether it's their Muslim neighbor or their Christian neighbor, I'd really love to see that happen.
So, okay, so you're a firm believer then in storytelling being able to affect real change, yes?
Yeah.
So, that being the case, what sort of story should we be telling ourselves and each other right now, considering all of this coronavirus and the mass panic and the interconnectedness of the horror, if you can put it that way? Because I'm wondering about this myself. I feel like as a storyteller, I feel like I should be bursting with stories to help people deal with it. But I'm so overwhelmed with the information and with the stuff that I want to say to people that I find that whatever I do say feels to me very insufficient. So what do you think? What are the sorts of stories we should be telling ourselves and each other right now?
Well, I would never want to tell people what I think they should do. I think we're all made with particular giftings, particular we each have a particular set of messages that I think tend to come out in what we write. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's definitely true of me.
Yeah, sure. No, it's worldview. You can't help it.
Exactly. And so one of the things that that I think that I'm glad that my stories tend to focus on, and that I hope that people will get out of them if they read them at this time, is I think fear is a problem. I think we need to not have a spirit of fear. I think, and I would love, a lot of what I write about is about fear and needing to overcome that, and how things like gratitude for what you have, and faith in a better future, and things like that. And as a Christian, faith in a higher power. I really think that a lot of you'll know the old quotation about cowards die many times before their deaths. And I really believe that a life lived in fear is a life half lived. And even when things are bad, I find it helpful to acknowledge that they are bad, and that we need to, and that it does take courage to live through times, sometimes, some particular circumstances that you may have in your life. But there's a way through it, and we have every reason to believe that that this story is going to be a good one, and that it's going to end well, and that. So that's what I try to write about.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, that's a universal message. So it fits for now. It fits for later. It fits for whenever. When you were talking, I had a thought, and I wonder if this is something that you come across as a Christian writer. I find that sometimes when it comes to coming up with active motivations for my characters, I sometimes have the tendency or the temptation to fall into a sort of deus ex machina frame of mind, merely because that's how I live my life as a Christian, is that I, experience the grace of Providence quite frequently, and oftentimes it happens not as a result of my own actions. But if you write characters that way, it could come off as not particularly interesting, kind of weak, passive. Do you ever think about that when you're writing your stories?
It's funny you should say this, because I just completed a development edit for a friend where I was really getting into that topic.
Yeah.
Wow. Where to start? Well, first of all, as a Christian, we do believe in the divine rescue, and that's a central part of our faith. But there's also what you've got to go on and do once you've been rescued. I believe it's James who says faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So as I was saying to this author I was doing a development edit for, there are definitely places in fiction, just as in life, for the divine rescue. And I always love to think of the ending of The Lord of the Rings, and how
the eucatastrophe,
the eucatastrophe that happens. But the fact that there is a eucatastrophe doesn't make Frodo a passive character. He's someone who has to persevere for a long time and in extremely adverse circumstances, and he's just consumed by his mission. And with the result that when the eucatastrophe comes, when that moment of divine providence comes, it's not passivity being it's not a deus ex machina, because there's no because he's done the work, and it's just his work and his faith being rewarded by something beyond the world. And that's what I think, and I think that's true for life, and I think it's true for writing as well. And so I try and put in those gleams of divine providence, but I also I think that a life of active service is a fundamental part of the Christian mission. So that's what I write into my books as well.
So how do you avoid then making those moments, those glimmers of Providence, from coming across as either preachy or contrived, because people's antennae are up for this sort of thing, especially if they know that you, or they have an inkling from your worldview that you hold certain truths to be dear to your heart.
Well, I've found a way that works quite well in practice for me. I always think of what C.S. Lewis said when he switched from writing primarily apologetical things to writing the Narnia books. And he said his aim was to, quote, steal past those watchful dragons. He found that when he was writing fiction, people were more receptive to it. And I've definitely found that. People are very receptive. Which, my primary, I think it helps that my primary allegiance is to the story, not necessarily to the message. I have one of my little quirks of belief is that I really think that if you're creating good art for itself, it's going to tell the truth no matter what. Like,
that's not a quirk. That's not a quirk. That's the truth.
You can't have real beauty without having real truth as well. And so I don't really bother. I'm very much a theme forward writer. So for me, there's got to be a theme, and it's got to work with the story before I feel comfortable telling it. And but I also know from experience that the better that my story is on a technical level, the more likely it is to tell the truth, which is another of the reasons why I'm a fiction writer, not a non-fiction writer. Where were we going with this? Oh yeah, so I don't find preachiness being a problem that I have to struggle with, because all I have to do is create a world where the things that I'm talking about fit organically into the story. My characters often talk about their beliefs, but my characters are also usually people of faith, and so that it's just natural for them to talk about those things. I also try to make sure, and I do a whole lot of research. You can't see my extensive medieval library lined up on my desk here, but
too bad.
But I read widely, and I try to make sure that I don't put any anachronistic language or views into my characters' mouths. So because I'm writing about people who would think about these things, and I'm writing about them engaging with these questions in a way that suits who they historically would have been, it all feels organic, and people appreciate that. They appreciate being told the truth about how people actually were back then. I don't think it's something that I need to feel like I have to necessarily slip a message into. The message just comes organically out of the story that I'm telling. That's always my aim.
Well, it seems like you've picked two of the best possible genres to do that, because you're right, historical fiction works very well for that, because obviously people are going to talk about that in the time periods, but fantasy even more so, because it seems to me at least that that fantasy readers let you get away with a lot more, because they're used to talk about the supernatural.
Well, the wonderful thing about fantasy and science fiction, of course, is that it's always being used to discuss various ideological questions.
Yeah, as it should.
And it does that in a peculiarly effective way, which is what attracts me to it. So.
Yeah, me too. I totally agree. Excellent. What is your favorite underappreciated novel?
I'm going to have to say Gaudy Night by Dorothy Sayers. It's amazing.
Okay.
And I love what it has to say about particularly women and vocation and marriage. It's wonderful.
Okay, I'm looking it up. I've never even heard of it.
Oh, you haven't? Well, then I picked a good one to recommend.
No, I mean, I love Dorothy Sayers, but
oh, good.
What is that one called again?
Gaudy Night.
Oh, Gaudy Note. Okay. Gaudy Night. Gaudy Night. Got it. Is that one of the Lord Peter Wimseys?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It is, in my opinion, the best of the Lord Peter Wimsey detective stories, and they are the best detective novels that exist. So it's
Do you
the
think?
greatest novel of all time. Yes.
Okay, interesting. Why? Why do you like those more than all the others?
She was doing something that I really appreciate, which is she was someone who was capable of writing at an extremely Margaret says, I love Gaudy Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Great taste, Margaret. She was someone who was capable of writing at an extremely high level of literary competence. She could have written, she could have written Evelyn Waugh or the kind of novels that Evelyn Waugh or Virginia Woolf would have written. But she chose to write fun, plot-driven boilers. And I really appreciate that about her. And so no one else I've read a bunch of Golden Age sort of detective mysteries. But no one else is working on the same level in terms of the themes that are going on and the questions that she's discussing. She's using her detective novels to really go deep into some of the issues that her society was facing at the time, and that's something that, of course, I always love. So,
have you read her Mind of the Maker?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think of it?
It was mind-blowing. I loved it. So right.
Yeah, I haven't read it in a while. I think I need to read it again. I remember it being kind of one of these very eye-opening experiences, but I wasn't sure what I thought about it ultimately. But yeah, it was definitely something that you're different afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have a few questions here, so I want to make sure that I'm. So one question we couldn't answer when doing our That Hideous Strength book club was figuring out what an American logress would look like. What about an Australian logress? There's a question for you. You thought you're gonna get off easy, haha.
No, that's. Let me just say, if I had figured that out, then I would already have written the Australian historical fantasy novel.
Okay.
But I haven't. But I had a bit of a light bulb moment earlier this year when I was reading a book called Metanoia. It's a memoir by an Australian actress, Anna McGahn. She was in Picnic at Hanging Rock. And her book is absolutely wild. She was powerfully converted to Christianity. A few years ago, and this is her memoir of that. But she talks about this particular spiritual experience she had in Australia on a shoot for Picnic at Hanging Rock, where she I better not tell you the entire story now, but the result was she was talking about Aboriginal spirituality and how she approached that as a Christian, and the way that she was talking about the sort of spiritual backdrop to Australian history and some of the things that went on in our history, and just in such a way that I thought, oh, I actually could write a fantasy novel set here. So it's just the tiniest spark of an idea at the moment. When I was writing Pendragon's Heir, I was very much influenced by That Hideous Strength and the idea of logress in That Hideous Strength, and that was what I was talking about in Pendragon's Heir. So I do think that one day we will see an Australian logress. I don't know what shape that will take at present, and I'm looking forward to finding out. Now,
yes, well, we are too when you write the book.
Yeah. Well,
are you reading anything interesting right now? That doesn't usually take that long to answer.
No, I just have to go through all the. Okay, probably the one I'm having most fun with now is called The Great Game. It's a history nonfiction about the 1800s in Afghanistan and India and Central Asia, and the British and Russians, because you may not know this, but there was this whole Cold War sort of thing going on over Central Asia because the Russians were expanding, the British were worried about their empire in India, and so they were both sending spies into Central Russia. And
oh yeah, it was an interesting time.
I'm really enjoying it. It's got all the sorts of things I enjoy, including gory divine judgment falling on the heads of the deceitful. So,
is this Peter Hopkirk? Is that right?
Yes, that's him.
Okay, very cool, excellent. Okay, so keeping up with the continuing this theme, what if somebody asked you what should I be reading during my quarantine? Because here in America, we're being told not even to leave our houses. What would you, in addition to those 3 books that you already mentioned, which are Metanoia, Gaudy Night, and The Great Game, wonderful variety of things there. What else would you recommend? Give us 2 or 3 more unexpected titles that you could recommend people.
Okay, well, I actually have 3 threads going on Twitter at the moment.
Oh,
one for traditionally published books, one for indie books, and one for nonfiction. And I'm adding recommendations to each of them daily.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
So there'll be about 30 books on there at this time.
Well,
but I'll just pick 3.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. An indie book that I would recommend, one that I really loved most recently was Kyla Stone's Labyrinth of Shadows. It's a young adult retelling of the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur from Ariadne's perspective as a bull dancing Cretan princess who's desperate to save her monster brother.
Okay.
It's so well written. If you want to be kept awake at night, read that one. It's a fabulous indie book.
Excellent.
And then when you finish, come and talk to me about the ending because I need someone to deprogram with about that.
Okay. Hear that, everybody?
So that's Labyrinth of Shadows by Kyla Stone.
Excellent.
A traditionally published book. Let me think what of it. I'm going to recommend Crimson Bound by Rosamund Hodge.
Okay.
It is a beautiful, beautiful book. It's another young adult book. Sorry, these are all slanting a bit young adult fantasy, but
that's okay.
It's got a love triangle, but get this, it's a love triangle between a very guilty girl who has done something terribly wrong. She's killed somebody. Anyway, so it's a love triangle between a guilty girl, the wicked boy who accepts her, and the good boy who was better than her. And it's just like so fantastic. There's a scene in it that brought me to tears.
Really?
The way she plays with and subverts, and she's Roman Catholic, so she's got it all going on.
Very cool. Okay, excellent. And nonfiction?
Nonfiction. I don't really read fluffy, uplifting nonfiction, so I'll recommend The Dynamite Club by John Merriman. It's about the anarchist terrorists who basically terrorized Europe in the 1890s and how they solved that problem.
The Dynamite Club, excellent. Fin de siècle ignited wow. Yeah, that was quite an interesting time period, the 1890s. Yeah, goodness, there was a lot of terrorism during that time. In Russia and America, Europe, yeah, it was an odd time for sure. Angeline's asking a question. Sorry if he brought this up earlier, but how do you feel about Holly Black's Folk of the Air series? This is the second time Angeline is recommending that we read Holly Black's Folk of the Air series, so I guess somebody has to answer that question.
I've only read one so far, but I've had a friend tell me in no uncertain terms that I need to read the next 2, so they're waiting for me to get to them.
Did you like the first one?
I didn't love it. It was fine. There were some things that I was a little unsure about, and there were, but of course, it's really hard, and I very rarely love a book on first reading. So,
okay, interesting.
But I've been told that I need to read the others, and the first book was intriguing enough that I'll continue with it.
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see. I don't have a favorite yet.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, do you owe anything to real people when you write your characters, or do they completely come out of your own subconscious?
Yeah, definitely, I do. What normally happens is that I'll get an idea for a particular type of character, and somebody I know in real life will be a helpful sort of placeholder for their character. And so when I most of the time I'll just be writing this character, but if I get stuck or if I'm trying to figure out how my character would realistically respond, then I might think about this real life person.
Okay. Yeah.
And often it's like a few different real life people. So it's really it's never quite a one-on-one.
That's interesting.
Correlation, yeah.
Well, that'll make him for richer characters, I imagine. So that's good. Sarah from here has a question about: have you ever read Rosemary Sutcliffe's historical YA fiction?
Yeah, definitely. I think my favorite one was The Shield Ring. So
there you go, Sarah. Yeah, I can't remember which one I read when I was a kid, but I remember enjoying it a lot. But I haven't read her in a long time. Is writing a kind of spiritual practice for you?
Probably more in hindsight than in
Interesting.
inspiration. Like, obviously, Christian authors have always seen the Holy Spirit as their muse, and I'm no different. But when I'm actually like pounding the keyboard, I'm usually focused on the job.
Yeah, very good. Do you have any process by which you select the names of your characters?
Most of the time, if it's a side character, I'll just go to behind the name and try and pick out one from the correct historical and geographical context. A lot of the time I'm writing about real historical people, so I use their name. It's really hard when you've got about 14 different Baldwins running around to
Yep.
So in that case, I might try and distinguish them a little bit by referring to them as their surname or whatever.
Baldy 1, Baldy 2. Sorry.
But when it comes to characters where I can pick a name and it's one that I'll be with for a while, it can take a really long time. I'll go through, I'll make a short list, and sometimes one will stand out as immediately perfect, like Marta, who's the heroine of The Lady of Kingdoms, which is book 2 in the Utremere books. She was a no-brainer. Marta is just a lovely name, and it also has connotations of Mars and martial, which is very appropriate for her.
Yeah.
And then another name I really labored over recently, and when I found the perfect name, it turned out to be my sister's best friend's name, so I couldn't use that, obviously.
Too bad.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes longer, you've got to get the exact right connotations in terms of class and and what kind of person this character is. So
you put a lot of thought into the names.
Sometimes I do, yeah.
I suppose it's easier when you're doing the Camelot ones.
Yeah, that was a bit easier.
Yeah, very good. Okay, that's I think about all we have time for today, just because I'm about to fall over from exhaustion. It's late over here, and but it's been a lovely chat. And you guys, if you want to ask 1 or 2 more questions, now is the time, because I'm going to get into my long wind down, my long Russian goodbye. But we had some trouble getting connected, but finally we did, and it was a lovely, great conversation. Would you like to any parting thoughts for our readers here?
Buy my books.
Excellent. She's good. She's good. She knows exactly what to say.
No, I can't say that. I mean, I did say that, but Angelina, how old were you when you started writing seriously? I started writing my first novel when for a friend's birthday. It was several years late for her as a birthday gift, but I was about 12.
Oh wow. Do you have that one lying around anywhere for blackmail purposes?
Yeah, no, it'll never see the light of day. I forget even where it is, but
Oh, too bad.
some thoughts to leave people with. Wow, I'm blanking again. I guess read a lot. Read different sorts of things. If, like, try reading something you don't normally read with a bit of an open mind. You know, if you don't usually like romance, try reading something a bit more romantic, and you know, try reading something from a perspective that you wouldn't normally be interested in, because I think fiction is really great at creating empathy, and we could probably all do with a little bit more of that these days. So
yeah, for sure. Oh, one more question. Seraphim's asking, what era do you want to explore next as a fictional setting? Have you thought about it? Have you thought about that?
Well, I've been recommending a lot of 1800s books in this interview so far, and I'm working my next project, which I'm shortly to begin drafting. It will be a gas lamp monster fantasy set in the 1890s in Europe. So
okay, there you go. Hence all the bombs in Paris.
Yes, there will be bombs in Paris.
Excellent, wonderful. What is your favorite book of the ones that you've written? Because that's the one I'm going to recommend that people read.
Do you have a favorite child, Nicholas? At the moment, my favorite would probably be. It's a really difficult choice, but I'm going to go with The Lady of Kingdoms. It's probably my favorite book in the Watches of Outremer series.
That's the second one?
It's number 2. You don't have to read number 1 first, but
you should.
But you probably should, because there's at least one big spoiler. But yeah, no, it's a hugely fun book. If you love Percival from Pendragon, and Marta is another one cut off the same block.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good.
And,
good.
Yeah, I just was really looking forward to telling the story. I think it turned out extremely well.
Good, wonderful. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to be putting all of your recommendations down on a post that I will share with all of my readers, and I'll share it with you, and you feel free to share it with all of your people as well. This has been really lovely, Susanna. I'm glad I finally had you on. I've been meaning to have you on for a while, but life and kids and other things. So I'm glad we finally got this done in spite of all of the difficulties. And I hope you and all of Australia and all of us get through this sooner rather than later. And yeah, so thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
Absolutely.